in their dawn chorus. From a distance, he watches a small white dog scavenging through bags of trash in the street. He kneels down to offer food to the stray animal as it continues its meal. The city awakens, filled with the bustling energy of commuters and shoppers going about their business. Youngjin walks through the crowded district, isolated by his headphones as the world moves around him. Sitting in class, he dismisses the idea that personality is dictated by birthdays, noting how illogical it would be for people born on the same day to be identical. While he reflects on the strangeness of human behavior, his classmates mock him for being an empathetic ENTP, though a nearby student chooses to keep his opinions to himself. A sudden, playful strike to the back of his head is accompanied by a loud shout of cake while he reacts with startled silence. He reacts with annoyed confusion as snacks and bread are tossed his way as a crude birthday greeting. A large package of cream bread sits on the desk as a sarcastic birthday offering. He decides to share the bounty with his friends, noting that his breakfast is officially sorted for the day as his classmates think they're senior. As they eat, the group jokes about the rarity of family birthday dinners, but Youngjin admits his family still follows the tradition before telling them to shut up and eat. One student warns the group about a bad omen from a dream involving broken teeth, predicting that those around them are destined to get hurt today. Turning the omen into a game, a classmate bets 10,000 won that Youngjin will be the one to suffer an injury today as the boy accidentally spits out his drink. The betting escalates as others join in, claiming they've already seen him get hurt while Youngjin demands to know what they are doing. Panic ensues as the bet money falls to the floor, prompting a frantic scramble to reclaim the cash. A student manages to pin down a bill using a colorful duster, much to the surprise of his peers. Adjusting his glasses with a menacing look, a student places a counter bet on Youngjin remaining unharmed and vows to handle the situation. Youngjin sighs in exasperation as the classroom descends into a gambling frenzy centered around his physical safety, while his classmates joke about the fun they are having. A collision in the hallway sends a deck of tarot cards scattering across the floor. He quickly apologizes to the black-haired girl he bumped into, while she insists she wasn't paying attention either. He picks up a card depicting the Hanged Man, staring at the mysterious imagery in confusion. The girl looks back at him with a somber, intense expression as she collects her belongings. She reveals another card from her deck, the grim image of death. Hisu pulls him close, her grip tight as she stops him in his tracks. With a bright, unexpected smile, she boldly asks Youngjin to start dating her. He stares at her in disbelief, suspecting a dare, even as she insists her feelings are genuine, while onlookers assume that confession is obviously a joke. The sun sets behind the city skyline, casting long shadows as dark clouds gather overhead. Later that evening, he encounters the same white dog near some trash bins as he heads home. Inside his room, the small dog becomes hyperactive, jumping on him as he tries to calm it down. A sudden rhythmic knocking at the door late at night causes the dog to bark wildly, leaving him wondering who could be visiting at such an hour as he shushes the animal. He opens the door to find Hisu, who mocks the idea of acting like a lingering ex while he stands there in total confusion. Standing in the pouring rain, he demands to know why she followed him home and what she wants from him. Her eyes glow with a frightening red light as she delivers a chilling declaration that she wants him. She casually mentions a steep hourly rate for her company while checking her phone, holding an umbrella over herself as she mentions hanging out with Hisu. He questions his own sanity as they walk together through the storm, while she celebrates her successful approach and thinks about how easy he is. She reaches out a hand with a sinister grin, warning him to be kind and keep their encounter a secret from his friends. Her tone shifts to a grim prophecy as she tells him he is a man destined to die very soon. Showing him the death card once more, she insists her tarot never lies and screams as he tries to dismiss her warnings. She flies into a sudden rage, screaming at him to stop as they stand in the middle of a flooded street. With a manic expression and glowing eyes, she commands him to give himself to her, leaving him completely terrified. She lunges forward, her hand clamping down on his arm with unnatural strength. Rain pours heavily as the entity pinning Kwon Youngjin looms over him. Her iron grip on his sleeve causes a sudden, quick splash sounding. He stares back in shock as fear begins to take hold. Massive, spectral hands reach out from the void to claim him. The masked entity descends with a terrifying predatory focus. Shivering in the cold, he questions if this monster is truly Hisu. The creature requests one final favor before proceeding with its sinister plan. It demands to possess his body and orders him to answer immediately. A sudden, frantic struggle ensues as he tries to break free. He flees through the rain as the multi-armed creature pursues him. He narrowly avoids a collision near a blue car as he runs. The creature screams the name of Kwon Youngjin with terrifying force. A powerful impact shatters the ground with a sudden loud quang. It celebrates its victory with a sinister chuckle after finally catching him. He crashes onto the wet pavement with a painful, heavy thud. The reality of the nightmare sets in with a heavy kung sounding. He spots a narrow alleyway and hopes to find safety inside. He flees into the dark alley with a quick "tok" sounding. Gasping for breath, he prays the narrow space with stopper. Pale fingers reach into the alley as red marks scar the wall. He is paralyzed with horror as the entity finds him instantly. A desperate struggle continues as he tries to scramble away once more. The monster mocks his lonely life in a basement room without parents, accusing him of hiding his shame from friends and questioning why a pathetic person even lives. A jagged wound tears across his back as he screams for help. The storm continues to rage over the indifferent city skyline. It calls out the name of Kwon Young-jin during the chase. The entity expresses growing frustration at his refusal to stop running. It demands to know why he is fighting so hard to survive. It clarifies that its goal is to possess his body rather than kill. The creature promises to make things easy for him, just like Hisu. With a sudden burst of speed, it lunges and slashes his shoulder. The monster twists as it laments how he has ruined everything. The creature despairs over its failing host and wonders how to handle the situation. It flies into a rage, claiming he has ruined its grand design. He reflects on his bleak existence as he recalls a lonely birthday and an empty home. The entity decides that if it cannot have him, no one will. A terrifying, wide-open mouth prepares to devour him in the rain. A sudden, brilliant flash of white light pierces through the dark. The small white dog heroically leaps toward the monster's gaping maw. A mysterious swordsman cleaves through the entity with a single, powerful blow. Young-jin lies broken on the ground as his vision begins to fade. The savior stands over the scene, his dark robes flowing in the wind. His shark yellow eyes gleamed with a devious and calculating intelligence. He jolts awake in bed with a sudden, sharp gasp as morning begins. The memory of the monster's attack remains a vivid, terrifying blur. The school statue stands tall under a clear and peaceful sky. Students in the hallway gossip about the disappearance of Hisu and their desire for tarot readings. He is haunted by the dark silhouette of yesterday's terrifying confrontation. Classmates mock his late arrival, labeling him a delinquent as he passes. He reacts with annoyance after a classmate waits for him, questioning if stalking is her new hobby. Young-jin looks back at the empty hallway with a sigh. If I made you uncomfortable, and about yesterday... A massive gray-skinned creature suddenly appears in a crouch. It wasn't there before. Yeah, the creature tenses up for a spring. It leaps forward with explosive power. They turn and flee in terror. Run, Young-jin! Oh, fuck! A high-speed chase across the field. Young-jin shouts at the black-haired girl, "Hey, what the hell did you do again?" While she screams back, "I didn't do anything." Young-jin continues to rage. "What do you mean you didn't? You did that crap to me yesterday too." While the girl pleads, "Young-jin, I can explain everything." As they sprint, the girl mumbles that it wasn't her, but a ghost called Sungakshi, though Young-jin commands her to shut up and run. Young-jin spots a basketball cart, so damn fast. At this rate, he grabs the metal cart. Young-jin? A sudden loud crash sounding spills the balls. Hey. The creature slips on the balls. Wow. The monster goes flying backwards. No way. She opens a bag of beans. She hurls red beans at it. Damn it. The beans strike the creature. He pulls her away quickly. "What are you doing, idiot?" They run toward the school gate. He pushes her through the opening. "Get outside!" He slams the green gate shut. A sudden, heavy kung-sounding hepes. The creature stops before the fence. It turns and begins to walk. Did it give up? Is it going away? It grabs a long metal flagpole. Is it going to jump over? She spots a heavy wooden cart. The creature vaults high over them. He shouts for her to move. Move! The creature vaults over the fence. A sudden, loud crash sounding occurs. Covered in trash, they both gag. The creature rises from the filth. Young-jin tells her to go. "Hey, let's go!" A sudden, powerful kung sounding others. The monster tackles him down. He grunts under the monster's weight. The girl screams for it to stop while Young-jin groans in pain. "Stop it!" A bright blast hits the creature. The creature screams and falls away. Evening light bathes a quiet street. He wakes at the start. The dog demands a real meal. "Bring me some real food." He scrolls through a grocery app. The dog shouts at him, "How dare you!" He recalls the monster's lethal strike. He is paralyzed with disbelief. What the hell? The dog questions how he is still alive and walking after that attack, noting that this is a first. "How are you able to walk and talk after that? This is a first for me."
He drinks water in his room.
The entity explains that its voice is merely being channeled through the animal, and while it confirms it is inside the dog, Young-jin concludes that it is indeed just a dog.
He points toward the bathroom. "By the way, the bathroom's over there."
Young-jin yells at the white dog, ordering it to get out whether it's an ancestor or not. The white dog's sudden movement and barks startle Young-jin as he checks his phone. Young-jin reaches out to grab the dog by its scruff, telling it that's enough and it needs to leave. A sudden, powerful kung sounding occurs as the dog pins Young-jin down on the floor. The dog commands Young-jin to get up while he lets out a sharp cry of pain. From the floor, they look out the window and spot the massive creature standing outside. Narration describes the nature of spirits as various objects and flowers float through a lush forest. Back in reality, the creature stands in the alley, throwing trash around while Yongjin watches in silence. The creature smashes through the window with a sudden, violent crash sounding. Yongjin falls back among shards of glass, wondering what is happening. The dog stands its ground and demands to know why the creature is in the way. The creature crouches low and lets out a low, ominous growl. The dog tells Yongjin to move quickly while he stares in confusion at what it plans to do.
The creature lunges forward with a sudden, powerful kung sounding as Yongjin falls back.
The white dog stands defiantly, its eyes glowing as it prepares to defend Yongjin. The creature lunges forward with a punch, calling Yongjin a punk. The dog barks a challenge, asking the creature if it knows who it's messing with. The small dog continues barking at the massive, crouched creature. The creature prepares to strike, sending the dog tumbling away with a sudden, forceful blow. The dog is knocked across the room with a series of sharp impact sounds. Yongjin asks the dog what it just did as they both look on in surprise. The dog insults Yongjin, calling him a brat and a one-trick pony for doing nothing. The creature grabs Yongjin by his shirt and lifts him high into the air. Yongjin realizes he's been caught again and fears the worst as he is pulled away. The creature pulls Yongjin close while the dog orders him to get up now. The creature begins to pull on Yongjin's tracksuit jacket, the fabric stretching tight. Yongjin stares back at the creature's single glowing eye with a look of pure confusion. A sudden, powerful explosion of light and sound fills the alleyway. A girl in a school uniform stands amidst swirling flames holding a speaker above her head. Looking closer, the girl is revealed to be Lee Hee-soo, staring ahead with a determined expression. Lee Hee-soo stands atop the speaker as mystical orange characters swirl around her in the fire. A smartphone screen displays a monk chanting video while the speaker pulses with energy. The creature is engulfed in a pillar of fire, letting out a horrific scream. Yongjin watches in awe, amazed by the incredible display of power unfolding before him. From inside the fire, a voice laments the loss of its clothes as the creature is burned. Yongjin and the white dog stand together, staring in shock at the intense inferno. The creature's feet and hand touch the ground with a heavy kung sounding as it emerges from the flames. The creature stands fully engulfed in fire, its single eye glowing with intense rage. The heat is so intense that the creature's skin begins to char and crack. The flaming creature lunges at Lee Hee-soo, its fist raised for a powerful strike. The creature delivers a devastating punch, sending Lee Hee-soo and Yongjin flying backward. They both crash onto the pavement with a loud, messy series of thuds. The flaming creature walks toward the fallen speaker, crushing it under its feck. A massive crater is formed in the ground as the creature lands with explosive force. Lee Hee-soo and Yongjin look at each other with wide-eyed shock and realization. The creature charges through a rain of debris, screaming for them to watch out. The creature delivers a series of heavy blows, striking Lee Hee-soo and Yongjin repeatedly. A final, powerful strike catches Yongjin in the face, drawing blood. A massive explosion of dust and debris fills the narrow alleyway. Yongjin and Lee Hee-soo lie on the ground, coughing and gasping for air as the smoke clears.
A sudden, heavy kung sounding across.
Yongjin yells for attention amidst crashes. The creature lifts a car high. Yongjin charges at the car-wielding creature. Yongjin screams desperately for his ancestor. Yongjin clings to the creature's legs. Yongjin drifts through a cosmic void. Yongjin stands bewildered in the darkness. Yongjin asks where I went at. A massive robed leg steps forward. The mysterious savior stands tall and silent. Yongjin asks who the man is and why he is dressed that way, while the savior simply asks who else it could be. The savior calls Yongjin his descendant. The savior transforms into the dog. The savior calls out to Yongjin. The savior offers to lend Yongjin his power while Yongjin charges at the creature with a burst of light. Yongjin lets out a fierce war cry. A massive blast sends debris flying. Yongjin and Hee-soo fall through smoke. Yongjin leaps forward with a fork. The white dog tells the girl to get up before she gets cut into pieces. Yongjin struggles to lift the heavy blade, cursing how much the damn thing weighs. Terror fills Yongjin's gaze as eyes meet. A sudden heavy kung-sounding echoes. Yongjin grunts as he hits the ground. The creature looms over the fallen Yongjin. The white dog lunges at the creature. The white dog calls Yongjin an idiot for trying to run and tells him to do it. Yongjin flees while dragging the blade. Yongjin swings the massive blade upward. Yongjin screams as he swings wildly. Yongjin falls as the creature stares. The blade spins in blurry circles. Petals fly as the blade frises. Pursuit continues through the narrow alley. The creature runs through falling blossoms. A single glowing eye watches closely. The creature's gaze narrows in focus.
A welder works beside a coaster.
A sculptor chisels a stone acri. The man in the suit exclaims that the player was the best and the pride of Korea, noting the statue looks just like him.
Memories of fans posing with the statue.
Passersby ask for a pose like the statue. He laughs about posing for his own statue. The elderly athlete mimics his stone form. The woman explains that her eldest son is a huge fan of his and is also into track.
Yongjin screams in pain on the ground.
The creature's massive leg strides past.
The creature runs toward a bright exit.
A sudden, loud crash sounding occurs. A green-skinned athlete wins the race. He celebrates his golden victory. Fans weep during his book thing. Yongjin stares in shock, wondering what the hell is happening.
Lee Hee-soo shouts a loud thank you while bowing deeply.
A mysterious glow mends a broken marker.
A child in blue shoes walks by. Small hands reach for blooming yellow flowers. Hee-soo recalls the long-haired savior with yellow eyes and thanks them for saving her from Songakshi, even though she fainted immediately after. The yellow-eyed entity stands silently behind the group. Looking at the phone's bunny filters, Yongjin demands to know what that is and how she's doing that again. Lee Hee-soo worries she'll be possessed and come to him again just like with Songakshi, while Yongjin asks why she would ever come to him.
Hee-soo holds a bowl in the kitchen.
Hee-soo explains that she didn't know how to describe it before, so she stayed silent about what the ghosts want. Hee-soo reveals that the ghosts want Yongjin, leaving him in a state of utter disbelief. Memories of Yongjin blaming Hee-soo for the weird events surfacing ever since they met. A woman in red robes prays intensely. The woman claimed she received Seongsu Daisen, and she describes it as a dark spirit hovering behind her. After that, the once empty shrine became so famous it was booked a year in advance. Hee-soo explains her failed attempts to remove her mother's ghost, leading the evil spirit to force her to summon Songakshi. Yongjin hides under his covers as Hee-soo shouts her gangs. Yongjin asks why she's sleeping there and suggests a friend's place, but she sadly admits she doesn't have any friends.
Bloody hands pound on a door, screaming to be let in.
A long-haired monster greets a young Lee Hee-soo in the narc.
Stars shine brightly in the night.
A traditional shrine glows under dim light.
A silhouette with glowing eyes asks where the girl went.
Surrounded by small ghosts, the silhouette threatens to put Hee-soo's head in a jar when she returns.
The morning sun breaks through the clouds. Hee-soo brushes her teeth while looking back at a hooded Yongjin. Sunlight floods the quiet urban rooftops. Yongjin packs trash as Hee-soo sits on the bed. The white dog complains that breakfast is lacking and asks if it's being fed animal feed, while Yongjin relays that the elder is unhappy. Hee-soo offers to join him for grocery shopping, and Yongjin tells her to suit herself. Fluffy white clouds fill the sky. Yongjin ties up the white trash bag. Hee-soo tells him it's not right like that. The two walk together in casual kiss. Yongjin stops and calls out Lee Hee-soo's name. Yongjin hesitates while Hee-soo looks back curiously. Yongjin groans in embarrassment and cringes inside his hoodie. Yongjin apologizes to Hee-soo, saying everything was his fault. Hee-soo tells Yongjin he's really mature, causing him to blush and pull his hood down in shame. Hee-soo smiles with pure, radiant joy.
Hee-soo reaches for some lemon candies.
Yongjin asks why she's getting candy, but she says it's for his blood sugar, leading him to wonder if he has diabetes. Hee-soo asks if he needs anything else, while Yongjin, seeing the full cart, asks if there's a war coming. Hee-soo tells him not to worry about money and to get what he needs, while Yongjin asks why she's buying so much. Hee-soo joyfully reveals she has 10 million won from Songakshi's money, though Yongjin thinks this is way too much. Hee-soo notes that Yongjin is good at cooking, though he humbly says it might taste bad. Startled by a notification on his phone, Yongjin reacts to a sudden emergency alert while his classmate Chaeol stands nearby. Chaeol spots Hee-soo and immediately assumes she is Yongjin's girlfriend, catching her completely off guard. Yongjin checks his group chat where his friends are teasing him about being seen with a girl, and he sighs in relief that he managed to avoid a bigger misunderstanding. Yongjin walks alone down a quiet residential alleyway. Yongjin lets out a sharp ah as a soccer ball strikes him directly in the back of the head. Rubbing his sore head, Yongjin turns around angrily and demands to know what the hell is going on. A stern-looking boy with a black bowl cut and a tube case on his back stares back at him. Yongjin asks the boy if he threw the ball while two other small children hide behind the youth's legs. The children explain they were just worried about Yongjin because the area was dangerous and they beg him not to be mad. As the kids wave goodbye, Yongjin sarcastically promises to be more careful about where he gets hit next time. Hee-soo searches the street, wondering if Yongjin has already departed. Sunlight floods the quiet rooftops of the neighborhood. A title card marks the passage of 15 minutes. Yongjin navigates the narrow streets while talking on his smartphone. Yongjin stops in his tracks as he spots Hee-soo waiting for him in the distance. Yongjin calls out to Hee-soo while she greets him warmly in the turn. Yongjin explains he was trying to avoid an awkward encounter with Chaeol, though Hee-soo has no idea who that is. A dark, jagged energy begins to manifest around Hee-soo's neck as a sinister presence emerges. A colossal, bearded spirit with luminous white eyes towers over the unsuspecting Hee-soo. The massive entity identifies himself as the grandfather of Mangtae. Yongjin stares upward in pure terror at the overwhelming presence looming before him. Dust settles in an empty alleyway as the white dog stands watch. The white dog stands alone in the center of the foggy street. The dog sniffs the pavement near some trash bags. The boy from earlier stands over the white dog, asking how it likes being an animal. The boy greets the dog, noting it has been a long time since they last met.
The white dog notices something strange about the boy's current form.
The boy asks what happened to the dog while the other children look on curiously. Looking up at the youth, the dog admits it does not know the answer. The boy suggests the sky god might be involved as he prepares to draw something from his case. A sudden, powerful whoosh sounding occurs as a whirlwind of energy erupts around the boy. Jagged spires of ice and light explode upward with incredible force. The boy transforms into a tall man with long black hair and a dark robe amidst the chaos. The long-haired man with yellow eyes and red eyeliner stares forward with a cold, detached expression.
A young boy dressed in traditional blue and red robes grips a colorful fan.
3 small children in traditional hanbok watch the scene with wide-eyed curiosity. The long-haired entity declares that he alone is more than enough to handle the situation. The boy with the fan asks the white dog if it was responsible for messing with his body. A sudden, sharp top sounding occurs as the boy snaps his fan shut. Shards of ice rain down around the white dog as the powerful energy dissipates. The bull-cut boy tells the dog to take its questions to the sky god. Walking away with the children, the boy asks why the dog chose to seal him away. The youth looks back one last time, asking if the dog was simply afraid of him.
A small whirlwind lingers in the alley as the white dog grumbles about being called an idiot.
The dog grumpily decides to let the insult slide this time since the boy left so abruptly. The dog continues its task as the children's voices call out to her. One of the small children in traditional dress suddenly startles the white dog. The 3 children crowd around the dog, offering to help it find the messy-haired big brother in black clothes.
A wooden wall is covered in numerous yellow talismans.
Yongjin lies on the floor as a mysterious voice praises him for being a good kid. The entity crouches while promising rice cakes. Trapped in a straw sack, Yongjin panics and wonders where he is while a song about a crying child echoes. Yongjin remains bound as the song warns that the tiger will take him away.
The bearded spirit looms over Yongjin, labeling him a bad kid.
A massive figure looms over the boy, claiming he will be put into a sack. Spotting Lee Hee-soo bound and crying beside him, Yongjin gasps her name in total shock. Yongjin watches in horror as white powder falls, accompanied by a chant about being salted. Hee-soo weeps, fearing they will be turned into fermented fish, while noting she has heard the haunting song 4 times already. Terror grips Yongjin at the mention of being fermented as a sudden, sharp prick sounding startles him. Yongjin stares down at the salt covering his spin. Bound in their sacks, the 2 remain motionless as a heavy, slow thud sounding approaches. Their attention is drawn by a long, high-pitched creak sounding nearby. A tense silence falls over the trapped pair. Mengtae leans down close to Yongjin and observes that he is finally awake. The towering spirit looms over the 2 prisoners with glowing eyes. Looking directly into the boy's terrified eyes, the spirit repeats that he is awake. Yongjin begins to stammer as the massive entity watches them closely. Yongjin demands to know why he is being called a naughty child. Mengtae mentions rice cakes for good children, prompting Hee-soo to scream for one while Yongjin desperately tells her not to provoke the spirit. Ignoring them, Mengtae places a knife to his mouth and tells them to prove they aren't unfilial, leaving Yongjin confused about the sudden challenge. Yongjin stammers that they don't have parents in the first place, causing the spirit's eyes to widen in a sudden, sharp gasp sounding. Mengtae erupts in fury, calling the denial of one's parents an outrageous crime. Threatening to turn them into salted fish, Mengtae ignores Hee's desperate plea that Yongjin truly has no parents. The spirit declares that denying one's parents is the same as killing them. Mengtae bellows that it is a heinous crime as he explains their parents have passed away. Pointing a finger at Hee-soo, Mengtae suddenly declares that she is definitely unfilial. Mengtae reveals that Hee-soo's mother prayed to him every night to take away her naughty daughter who wouldn't listen. A sudden, powerful whoosh sounding occurs as Mengtae turns to leave the room. The spirit looks back one last time as another heavy whoosh sounding fills the air. Mengtae orders them to wait quietly as he begins a slow, heavy stomp sounding away from them. The exit is marked by a long, groaning creak sounding as the spirit leaves the room. A sudden loud bang sounding occurs as the door is shut tight, leaving the 2 in silence. Still bound in their sacks, the 2 sit up and look around the dark room. Yongjin laments that they are in deep trouble, though Hee-soo reminds him they were planning to come to this place anyway. Hee-soo tries to manifest her power with her hand, but Yongjin skeptically asks what she thinks she's doing. Dejected, Hee-soo apologizes while Yongjin points out a shelf of talismans and suggests they find a way out. Hee-soo hops toward the exit as a faint rhythmic creak sounding follows her movement. Looking around the inner sanctum, Yongjin is awestruck by the intricate paintings and statues surrounding them. Yongjin wonders what all the artifacts are for while Hee-soo urgently calls out his name. Hee-soo finds some traditional robes and asks Yongjin if he wants to wear them since walking in the sacks is too difficult.
Clad in simple white and yellow robes, the 2 stand before a massive altar filled with divine figures.
Yongjin worries about his missing clothes and how he can go outside, but Hee-soo offers to pay for a taxi. Hee-soo points toward the screen doors, explaining that it leads directly to the yard. The girl freezes as she spots a shadow through the paper, whispering that someone is right there. The 2 watch the door with bated breath. An altar stands silent with offerings set before the painted deities.
Outside, a decorated tree stands tall in the quiet courtyard.
Huddled together, the two realize the atmosphere has become unnervingly quiet.
Youngjin grips the doorframe in a sudden tight squeeze sounding and tells Hisu they are in big trouble. The door is forced open with a sudden loud rattle sounding as Youngjin lets out a terrified scream. A woman in a dark red and purple hanbok stands in the doorway as a sudden heavy thud sounding occurs. Peering up from behind the girl, Youngjin assumes the woman is a mother. A sudden loud crash sounding happens while Youngjin screams Hisu's name in terror.
Huisu collapses onto the ornate floor.
The black-haired woman tells the cowering children they should have announced their arrival if they were coming. The shadowy woman looms over them.
Youngjin asks if she brought what they needed while peeking out from a wooden cabinet.
Their presence is marked by a sudden, nervous fidgeting sounding as Youngjin bows while Huisu remains on the ground. Youngjin stands up and explains he has an urgent matter at home and needs to leave immediately. Turning to the girl, Youngjin admits he has no idea how to get out of the room. Youngjin asks Huisu if she can show the way.
Gray, hollow-eyed spirits swarm the boy as a voice calls his behavior rude.
The shaman asks Youngjin if he failed to receive any proper education at home.
Gray hands claw at Youngjin as the shaman calls him by his full name. The shaman notes Youngjin's lack of manners while he struggles against the small, swarming entities. A sudden, sharp gasp sounding occurs as the woman declares there is no need for him to ever visit again. A sudden, tight squeeze sounding happens as gray hands cover Youngjin's face while the woman continues her threat.
The shaman reveals a wide, menacing grin and glowing pink eyes.
Restrained by the spirits, the two children listen as the woman demands to know who they are.
Their attention is caught by a sudden, soft whoosh sounding as the bearded spirit Mengte appears.
Calling him an old man, the shaman orders Mengte to leave because his work there is finished.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding occurs as a gray hand reaches toward the screen. The shaman praises the children but insults the spirit by calling him a bad mother. A sudden, sharp swipe sounding occurs as Mengte points a finger, claiming bad parents deserve the fermented fish punishment as well.
The shaman scoffs and asks if the old man has gone senile, which leaves Mengte surprised.
Mengte brandishes his knife and asks the woman if she knows the reason she is trapped in this place. A sudden quick snap sounding occurs as the shaman raises a single finger.
A sudden loud slash sounding happens as a powerful force strikes Mengte.
Mengte reaches out and shouts at the woman in a furious rage. A sudden sharp whoosh sounding occurs as the shaman deflects his attack, causing him to shout about her daring to defy him.
A wrap jar falls over Hevery.
A sudden sharp snap sounding happens as the shaman clenches her fist, causing the jar to float into the air.
A sudden quick whoosh sounding occurs as she points her finger, stuffing the spirit into a container. A yellow talisman is stuck firmly.
The shaman looks back and remarks that an old man is useless as a servant if he cannot recognize his master.
Youngjin stares in complete shock as the shaman wears a smug sidelong expression.
The shaman asks the children if they have finished eating, causing them to look at her in confusion.
A sudden loud gasp sounding occurs as the gray spirits swarm over the terrified pair.
Jagged energy strikes the terrified boy.
Youngjin slumps forward, unable to move his body at all.
Huisu tells Youngjin she is certain those spirits did something to their bodies.
Eerie spirits gather in the dark.
A sudden sharp smack sounding occurs as the shaman strikes Youngjin's shocker. Youngjin collapses with a sudden loud crash sounding as the woman begins to speak. The shaman looms like a silhouette. Looking at the woman in terror, Huisu calls out to mother.
The woman tells the girl she is not her mother and threatens to stuff her in a jar if she doesn't stop the nonsense.
A sudden melodic ring sounding occurs as the shaman smiles, noting that her suspicions were true.
The shaman stands over the children while a song about a shaman rings out through the room.
A voice from the courtyard calls out to ask if the shaman is inside.
Dragon murals loom over heavy wooden doors.
Youngjin comments on the woman's terrifying nature, but Hisu clarifies that the entity is not actually her mother.
Hisu recalls her mother's gentle personality while Youngjin looks on with exhaustion.
Youngjin urges Hisu to stop her crying and constant apologizing.
Youngjin fears their situation is becoming hopeless as Hisu continues to sob in despair.
Hisu weeps while describing the horrific sight of her mother's skin rotting away.
A memory shows the shaman in a dark hanbok with dark, rotting flesh spreading across her chest.
Youngjin asks if there is a specific requirement for the entity to swap bodies with a host.
Youngjin posits that the spirit is seeking a new host to replace its current decaying physical form. A dark vision reveals the advanced state of decay on the shaman's back.
Youngjin suddenly realizes that the spirit's intended target for a new body is Hisu. Hisu explains her family's long history as shamans, much to Youngjin's complete shock. Youngjin celebrates his returning strength while encouraging Hisu to try moving her own body as well.
A sudden, loud thud sounding occurs as Youngjin springs to his feet.
Hisu counts out loud while trying to help Youngjin steady himself.
Hisu gives Youngjin's robe a sudden, sharp yank sounder.
Hisu chides Youngjin for being annoying after she accidentally exposes his back.
Hisu tells Youngjin to stop pretending and get up since his strength is returned.
A white bulldog opens the door with a sudden loud creak sounding as Hisu calls out to an ancestor.
A small hand firmly grasps the hilt of a massive blade.
One spirit child swings the heavy blade around playfully and offers it to Youngjin.
The spirit child tosses the massive knife through the air toward the startled boy.
A sudden loud bang sounding happens as Youngjin struggles to catch the heavy weapon.
The spirit children mock Youngjin for his inability to handle the massive blade with grace.
Hisu asks the young spirit about the shaman's lineage and their level of skill.
Hisu bows her head deeply toward the ground.
Hisu looks up with a wide smile as the new chapter title appears.
The spirit children are amazed by the massive scale of the inner shrine.
Youngjin warns the children against going in a certain direction within the shrine.
One child announces a change in leadership while Hisu and the children interact.
The white bulldog explains that the spirits are moving the boy's body for him.
Youngjin realizes the children aren't human as the dog identifies them as heavenly spirits. The children run around searching for candy while Youngjin desperately asks for quiet.
A weary client expresses her deep gratitude to the shaman for her help.
A sudden quick snap sounding occurs as the shaman opens her ceremonial fan. The shaman uses her spiritual power to dispel the dark shadows clinging to the woman.
The woman remarks on how much better and lighter she feels after the intervention. A sudden sharp tap sounding occurs as the shaman warns that she is only suppressing the energy.
The shaman requests a small offering while the woman bows in sincere thanks. A grim warning appears over the woman's hands regarding her inevitable need for a full ritual. The shaman tells her client that she can consult with a boy sitting in the other room. The shaman assures the client of the boy's strong spiritual power despite his young age. A sudden loud crash sounding from the shrine startles both the client and the shaman.
The shaman scolds the children for knocking things over while they offer a casual excuse.
Hisu reaches for a ceramic jar as the white bulldog warns her to stay away.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding occurs as Youngjin screams for the girl to get back.
A sudden loud boom sounding occurs as a jar is violently destroyed.
The room is filled with bright light and a powerful spiritual discharge. Youngjin screams in terror as Hisu lies unconscious on the floor. Confused and disoriented, Hisu awakens as Youngjin charges forward with his weapon, shouting her name. Youngjin screams a desperate warning for her to move out of the way. A towering, faceless spirit with claw-like hands looms menacingly over the prone girl. A sudden, loud scream sounding erupts as Hisu watches Youngjin prepared to strike. Youngjin swings the massive blade, cutting through the dark miasma with all his strength. The heavy weapon strikes the spiritual entity with a sudden, powerful crash sounding. The three spirit children cheer and clap, impressed by Youngjin's surprising display of power. Panting heavily, Youngjin struggles to catch his breath after the exertion. Youngjin looks on in disgust, noting the swarm of dark entities approaching. The shaman watches from the shadows, observing the spirits as they begin to invade the shrine. The shaman addresses Youngjin by name, surprised by his rapid recovery. Wearing a sinister grin, the woman calls the boy absolutely perfect. The shaman towers over Hisu, mockingly suggesting the girl should have remained hidden. The woman's expression becomes predatory as she prepares her next spiritual move. Malicious, skull-faced spirits gather in the darkness, ready to pounce. One spirit child steps forward with glowing eyes, vowing to prevent the shaman's success. The other spirit children mock the woman, claiming only weak shamans resort to such tactics.
The child spirit demands to know the location of their missing fingers.
A haggard woman enters the room, staring in confusion at the chaotic scene unfolding before her.
A sudden, sharp crackle sounding occurs as the jar in the woman's hands begins to shatter.
The woman screams in agony as a violent explosion of spiritual energy erupts from her body. A monstrous, wide-eyed spirit lunges at Youngjin with terrifying speed. The spirit screams its claim over the boy's body while Youngjin recoils in terror. A sudden, blinding flash sounding occurs as the malicious entity is violently repelled. Youngjin stares in shock as the shaman reacts with cold fury to the interruption.
The shaman clenches her fist and mockingly questions the spirit's arrogance.
Youngjin remains frozen, unable to process the overwhelming spiritual pressure. A sudden, heavy whoosh sounding happens as dark energy begins to circulate through the room. The shaman looks down at the unconscious client, satisfied that one target has been neutralized. Mocking the children's efforts, the shaman uses chains of dark energy to restrain them. The shaman reveals a bloody wound on her finger, her eyes glowing with malevolence. Blood trickles across the floor as the shaman describes the manifestation of deep resentment. A sudden, sharp crackle sounding occurs as the blood forms a dark, ritualistic seal on the carpet. A sudden, powerful whoosh sounding happens as the spirit children are thrown back by the blood magic. With blood staining her face, the shaman declares that her power cannot be contained. A hellish vision of screaming, hollow-eyed souls fills the space. A fiery, demonic visage emerges, representing the curse the shaman intends to unleash.
A sudden, sharp splat sounding occurs as Youngjin and Hisu both collapse, coughing up blood.
Dismissing the importance of divine protection, the shaman steps over the fallen children with a scoff. The shaman leans in close to a spirit child, repeating their question about the missing fingers.
The shaman reveals the severed fingers inside her own mouth, laughing maniacally at the children's horror.
A sudden, loud howl sounding occurs as the room is consumed by a swarm of wailing spirits. The spirits let out a sudden, deafening wail, sounding as their red eyes glow in the dark.
The spirit children watch in pure terror as the malevolent energy continues to grow. A sudden, powerful roar sounding happens as the shadows twist into monstrous shapes. The room vibrates with a sudden, high-pitched screech sounding as the spirits reach their peak. A sudden, loud crash sounding occurs as the entities writhe in a pained, chaotic frenzy. Hisu explains that these are the spirits of the unborn who have transformed into pure evil. The spirits are described as tragic beings who can never be whole or reunited with their parents. One of the spirit children pleads with the monsters to remember their mothers and find peace. The shaman mocks the spectacle before her as a sharp, sudden sounding escapes her lips, followed by a sudden, high-pitched fweet sounding.
Dark spirits perform a sudden, aggressive lunge sounding as Youngjin screams out in terror for Baksun.
A spirit child is slammed with a sudden, heavy wham sounding as he warns the shaman that her safety is forfeit once their brother arrives, his collar tightened by a sudden, firm clench sounding. The shaman dares the child to call for help while promising to kill anyone who arrives as the dark energy begins a sudden, eerie wriggle sounding. The child shouts a desperate insult as the dark tentacles continue their sudden, unsettling wriggles sounding near the shaman's smiling face.
Sensed an approaching presence, the shaman executes a sudden, sharp turn sounding to face the entrance.
Standing over the battered pair, the shaman mockingly asks if they are ready to continue their confrontation.
The woman boasts that this power will elevate her beyond the status of a god while Youngjin watches her with pure hatred.
The shaman's hand performs a sudden predatory reach sounding toward the boy Tad.
An unexpected blast of wind creates a sudden, powerful whoosh sounding that interrupts the shaman's progress.
A ritual blade hits the wall with a sudden, heavy thunk sounding right in front of the sacred talismans. The white bulldog stands defiantly as 3 spectral blades manifest with a sudden, energetic foosh sounding.
Looking down at the animal, the shaman acknowledges that it is far from an ordinary dog.
A massive aura erupts from the dog with a sudden, thunderous whoosh sounding.
A majestic deity manifests behind the small animal with a sudden, intense whoosh sounding as he is identified as a god.
Youngjin and Huisu look up in disbelief at the divine figure while the shaman's expression sourly shifts to anger.
The deity towers over the room as his robes create a sudden, flowing whoosh sounding in the spiritual wind.
Youngjin and Huisu remain frozen as red spiritual energy begins to swirl around them. The shaman throws her head back and erupts into a sudden, long laughter sounding that echoes through the shrine. The woman warns the deity to stay out of her business unless he wants to share the dog's fate.
Mocking his appearance, the shaman dismisses the spirit as a low-ranking noble, while Youngjin wonders why the figure is simply standing still.
The children watch the tense standoff from the floor as spiritual light flickers around them.
The deity tells the shaman not to try anything clever as he admits he was only debating how to handle her possession of a human host.
Youngjin looks on with exhaustion, fearing that the spirit might ask him for another difficult favor. Blood drips from the shaman's arm with a sudden wet wriggle sounding as she prepares to challenge the deity's power. The shaman lunges forward with a sudden violent swoosh sounding as Youngjin screams out for the forefather. The two powers collide with a sudden, massive crash sounding that shakes the entire shrine.
Unharmed by the clash, the shaman mockingly asks the god why he hasn't tried to forcibly remove her from the body yet.
Turning her attention back to the boy, she asks if these weaklings were truly all the help he could find. The shaman looms over the fallen boy and declares that it is finally time for him to surrender his body to her.
She offers to spare his friends if he complies, otherwise promising him a pathetic death.
The woman gives his robes a sudden, aggressive tug, sounding as she forces him to make a choice. With her eyes glowing a malevolent red, she promises to take his life the moment he draws his final breath. The shaman begins to declare her ascension to godhood before a sudden, weak voice tells her to stop. Huisu desperately grabs the woman's robes and begs her to stop the madness.
Youngjin watches in horror as Huisu cries out for the entity to leave her mother's body.
Tears stream down the girl's face as she screams for the spirit to get out.
The shaman sends the girl flying with a sudden, cruel flop sounding of her fit. Huisu hits the floor with a sudden, heavy thud sounding while the shaman watches with cold indifference. Blood pulses around the woman's hand with a sudden, rhythmic wriggle sounding as she admits the girl was only ever a tool. The shaman stares down at Huisu and dismisses her as worthless now.
She prepares to deliver a fatal blow while promising that the girl's mother will join her soon.
Youngjin is caught in a sudden, painful grab sounding of blood magic as he groans in agony. The shaman prepares to strike the prone girl as her dark shadow begins a sudden, menacing loom sounding over the floor. Bleeding and broken, Huisu looks up at the possessed woman and whispers a final apology.
Youngjin screams Huisu's name in a frantic attempt to reach her.
The shaman's hand ignites with a sudden, lethal whoosh sounding of spiritual energy. A memory reveals Huisu's mother offering her a bulky talisman bracelet which the young girl initially found strange and unappealing. The mother hugs her daughter tightly while explaining that the talisman has the power to bring them back together no matter what.
In the present, tears suddenly well up in the shaman's eyes as the mother's true voice begs Huisu to run away.
Staring in shock, Youngjin and Hisu watch as blood spatters across the room. As the shaman raises a ritual knife, Hisu cries out in desperation. Tears stream down Hisu's face as she screams for the violence to stop. Hisu lies paralyzed on the floor while dark spiritual tendrils coil around her. A sudden, energetic leap sounding happens as Hisu lunges forward with a frantic cry for her mother.
The shaman moves with terrifying agility as more blood stains the floor.
Youngjin and Hisu both plead for the mother's return while trapped in the spiritual onslaught.
A memory reveals a bandaged young girl smiling while promising to help someone.
A distorted, red-eyed vision demands that Youngjin surrender his body immediately.
Malevolent voices torment the boy by claiming his birth caused his parents' deaths.
A faded memory shows a peaceful car ride before a tragic accident occurred.
Blinding light and fire consume the vision as a hand reaches into the void.
A sharp spiritual strike slices through a sacred painting on the wall.
A sudden, powerful whoosh sounding occurs as the shaman towers over the fallen girl. The shaman reacts with explosive rage, cursing the persistent interference of the mother's soul. Hisu weeps over her mother's body, terrified by the unfolding spiritual battle.
A sudden, sharp whoosh sounding happens as the shaman channels dark energy through her black-clawed hand.
A sudden, loud whoosh sounding occurs as the shaman swings a massive blade to deliver a final blow.
A sudden, heavy thunk sounding echoes as the blade misses its target and strikes the floor.
The shaman spins around in confusion, sensing a sudden shift in the spiritual pressure.
A massive figure in white robes stands between the shaman and her victims. Youngjin stands tall with a massive cleaver surrounded by swirling black and red energy.
A sudden rhythmic boom sounding accompanies the terrifying glow of Youngjin's red spiritual eye.
Youngjin executes a powerful upward swing with his massive ritual blade.
A sudden violent slash sounding occurs as the shaman is struck by the boy's counterattack.
A sudden forceful thwam sounding happens as the shaman is sent flying across the room.
Gasping for breath, the shaman questions how the boy managed to break her powerful spell. A sudden, weary stagger sounding occurs as Youngjin struggles to maintain his footing while the shaman marvels at his human strength.
A sudden, unsettling wriggle sounding occurs as dark wood-like tentacles trap Hisu and the child spirit. A sudden, rapid swoosh sounding happens as the shaman summons a swarm of shadowy entities.
A sudden, airy whoosh sounding occurs as Youngjin performs a mid-air spinning attack.
A sudden, sharp whoosh sounding happens, followed by a sudden, firm grab sounding of the blade's handle. A sudden, metallic clang sounding echoes as the two spiritual powers collide in a shower of sparks.
A sudden, electric crackle sounding occurs as Youngjin's red eye flares with intense energy during the clash.
A sudden, loud clang sounding and a sudden, quick clank sounding repeat as the fighters trade rapid blows. A sudden, swift slice sounding occurs as a blade cuts through the dark atmosphere.
A sudden, sharp snap sounding happens as the shaman's ritual staff is broken in two.
A sudden, dull thunk sounding occurs as Youngjin slams the broken piece of the staff into the ground. The shaman lets out a sudden, high-pitched scree sounding while staring into Youngjin's cold red gaze. Backed against a mural, the shaman demands to know the true nature of the entity within the boy.
A sudden, intense da-dun sounding accompanies Youngjin as he readies a new spiritual technique.
A sudden, rapid toss sounding occurs as Youngjin hurls a steel jar toward the laughing shaman.
A sudden, violent shatter sounding happens as the jar is destroyed, releasing its contents.
A sudden, wet plop sounding occurs as dozens of red centipedes crawl over Youngjin's white robes.
A sudden, heavy thwack sounding happens as a massive white-furred beast head manifests to attack.
A sudden, deep thunk sounding and a sudden, long cree sounding echo as Youngjin strikes the ground amidst the chaos.
A sudden, loud cree sounding occurs as massive insect-like legs surround the boy.
The shaman explains that this monster is a fiend born from the most malicious of curses.
A giant, pale-faced creature with many legs lets out an eerie, echoing laughter.
Youngjin prepares for a final confrontation as the massive, laughing monster looms over him.
Hisu stares in absolute horror. The shaman lunges forward, declaring her intent to use the host's body.
She bets her opponent won't attack her while she occupies a fellow demon.
A sudden, airy whoosh sounding occurs as the shaman spirit begins to exit her host.
A sudden, massive crash sounding echoes as the spiritual power is violently repelled. Youngjin stands ready, wreathed in black and red energy.
The shaman is stunned that the fiend fell in just one swing.
She mocks his foolishness with a sudden, long laughter sounding. A sudden, rhythmic wriggle sounding occurs as the spiritual mass begins to bulge. Two massive, multi-legged monsters manifest with a sudden, loud whoosh sounding.
The shaman orders her minions to tie the boy down without killing him.
She grips the host tightly while reiterating her goal of becoming a god. A sudden, eerie laughter sounding causes the shaman to flinch in confusion.
A sudden, sharp crack sounding and a sudden, violent rip sounding occur during a painful transformation.
A sudden, wet munch sounding and a sudden, heavy crunch sounding echo as the monster is consumed.
A sudden, deep gulp sounding occurs as Youngjin swallows the malicious energy.
Youngjin licks his lips with a sudden, wet lick sounding and a sinister grin.
The shaman falls back with a sudden soft flop sounding while trembling in fear. A sudden menacing loom sounding occurs as the boy towers over his prey.
Yanjin lunges toward her with a sudden violent swoosh sounding.
The white bulldog watches the scene with wide-eyed confusion.
Yangjin stands wreathed in dark energy as the shaman questions his true identity. The shaman flees the shrine with a sudden rapid dash sounding.
A sudden loud crash sounding occurs as she bursts through the wooden doors.
Yangjin pursues her with a sudden energetic leap sounding.
A sudden heavy slam sounding and a sudden long slide sounding occur as they hit the ground.
Yangjin pins her down with a sudden quick whip sounding of his blade. The shaman screams in terror during a sudden frantic scramble sounding.
A sudden massive slam sounding marks the end of the violent confrontation.
In a memory, a sudden heavy thump sounding occurs as a priestess performs a ritual. Villagers watch the nighttime ceremony with a mixture of hope and fear.
Ritual performers shout and chant as they dance around the sacred fire.
A demonic image flickers within the intensity of the ritual's flames. A new day begins with a sudden gentle chirp sounding as birds take flight.
Sacrificial offerings of rice and coins are prepared for the local gods. The priestess finishes her dance with a sudden rhythmic boom sounding. She promises the rain will come to the village the following day.
The priestess sits alone, devastated that her prophecy of rain has failed.
A sudden metallic clatter sounding occurs as she kicks over her offerings in rage.
Staring at the icons, she questions if the gods even exist at all.
Villagers watch in silence as the disgraced priestess passes by them.
Gossip spreads quickly as the villagers brand the woman a complete fraud. A villager advises making an offering to stave off a new calamity.
The townspeople debate whether the priestess is truly just a quack. An angry man warns that a sickness will surely follow her disrespect of the gods.
Whispers fill the village as everyone begins to fear divine punishment.
Shadowy child spirits appear with a sudden, unsettling crawl sounding. Villagers warn their neighbors to keep a close watch on their wandering children.
A priestess performs a ritual dance.
A mother weeps as villagers debate the mysterious disappearance of a child.
Villagers assume the missing child will eventually return home.
A terrified boy reaches out desperately.
The priestess prepares a ritual sacrifice. Ritual dancers perform for praying villagers. A mother finds her missing child.
The crying mother holds her child tightly as onlookers react with grief. Grieving villagers surround a kneeling woman.
Grim villagers watch the ritual proceed.
The sinister priestess stares back coldly.
Villagers carry torches through the night.
A panicked man points toward trouble.
A village burns in chaotic agony.
Grieving villagers demand the return of their stolen children. The priestess claims the villagers requested this outcome.
She blames their selfish greed for the sacrifices. Villagers condemn the woman for her evil actions.
The priestess mocks their belief in divine protection.
A sudden sharp whish sounding occurs as a torch is thrown.
A sudden quick tap sounding happens as the fire catches.
The burning priestess denies the existence of dots.
She asserts her own terrifying reality.
The priestess grins within the friends.
She vows to achieve godhood through death.
A demonic face manifests in fire.
The flaming figure reiterates her divine vow.
A sudden wet splish sounding and a sudden wet splat sounding echo.
Yangjin stands within a ritual circle.
A sudden rapid rattle sounding occurs as nearby containers shake.
A sudden loud chatter sounding and a sudden airy whoosh sounding happen.
A sudden massive swoosh sounding occurs as a claw strikes.
The monster declares it's time for absolute retribution. A sudden deep roar sounding echoes from the beast.
A sudden massive crash sounding occurs as the ground shatters.
A sudden heavy thud sounding repeats during the chase.
The monster promises death to every single person.
It vows to execute everyone personally.
A sudden rhythmic boom sounding accompanies a massive energy strike.
Hisu cries out in alarm while watching the bow.
A sudden sharp crackle sounding occurs as the beast questions Yangjin's nature.
Yangjin wears a dark, knowing smirk. The monster reacts with visible shock.
A sudden forceful lunge sounding happens as claws strike. A sudden violent slash sounding and a sudden high-pitched scree sounding occur. A sudden heavy tumble sounding and a sudden wet wriggle sounding occur.
The monster screams for death during a sudden airy foosh sounding.
A sudden loud boom sounding echoes through the arena.
Yangjin stands victorious over his enemy.
A sudden rapid swish sounding repeats as dark energy fades. A colossal dark entity erupts with a sudden loud boom sounding as it looms over a boy in traditional white robes. The monstrous creature prepares its attack with a sudden guttural roar sounding.
The boy is thrown backward with a sudden quick zoom sounding as the entity lunges forward.
A vibrant blue folding fan featuring a golden deity is displayed.
A split panel highlights the intense confrontation between the glowing-eyed monster and the red-eyed boy.
The area is engulfed in energy with a sudden airy whoosh sounding as the combatants clash.
Distorted spirits and swirling winds create a sudden sharp swoosh sounding and a sudden high scree sounding.
The boy in white is tossed through the air with a sudden airy whoosh sounder.
A hand firmly closes a red fan with a sudden sharp snap sounding and a sudden airy psh sounding.
A ritualistic object adorned with ancient coins and red ribbons glows with divine power.
A boy in a blue and red robe commands a circle of smoke with a sudden, quick fwish sounding.
The boy in white is caught in a magical gust with a sudden, soft puff sounding.
He tumbles to the ground through the dissipating smoke with a sudden, heavy slump sounding.
The newcomer is formally identified as Jah, the deity of the earthly branches, standing with a sudden, wide billow sounding.
Jah stands tall while dark shadows continue to swirl around the battlefield.
Jah approaches a gruesome, defeated entity that moves with a sudden, harsh scrape sounding near several young children.
The three children react with intense fear and disgust at the mangled creature before them. The entity reveals its hideous form as it moves with a sudden, slow crawl sounding and questions Jah's identity. The creature is shocked to learn it is facing a high-ranking celestial deity. Jah introduces himself as a lord of the heavens while looking down at the creature. The entity laments its suffering and asks why its desperate prayers were never answered by the gods.
A glimpse into the past shows a human shaman desperately seeking divine intervention at a dark altar.
The spirit cries out that it would never have fallen into darkness if the gods had helped it.
It accuses the gods of betrayal for turning their backs on a human devotee.
Jah dismisses its claims, stating that its prayers were rooted in nothing but selfish desires.
He asserts that no deity would ever listen to such self-serving pleas.
Grotesque little spirits emerge from the creature with a sudden tiny wah sounding and a sudden wet wriggle sounding. Jah continues his condemnation as the creature reels with a sudden powerful whoosh sounding of energy.
He points to the many suffering spirits the creature harmed with a sudden crying wah sounding filling the air. The entity tries to shift blame onto others, but Jah coldly commands it to be silent.
Jah prepares to deliver divine justice with a sudden rhythmic flop sounding of his decorative fan.
He reveals a crescent moon on his forehead and utters a single, powerful word. A massive explosion of dark energy occurs with a sudden, explosive kaboom sounding as the creature is struck. Jah looms over the remnants of the spirit in the aftermath of the strike.
A dark void opens with a sudden, powerful whoosh sounding as the entity begs for a final mercy.
The spirit is utterly annihilated with a sudden, airy froosh sounding as Jah completes the ritual.
Jah stands before the children while a final cloud of dust clears with a sudden, light wish sounding.
The scene shifts to a grand palace room where a woman in yellow mourns over a fallen figure.
Jah unfurls his fan with a sudden rhythmic flap sounding to begin a new ritual.
A giant, radiant lotus flower appears with a sudden, calm float sounding above the group.
The celestial flower of life blooms in a spectacular display of light and petals.
Intricate, glowing branches of the divine plant spread out with a sudden, quick fwish sounding. The onlookers are left in awe of the beautiful and sacred phenomenon.
The fallen woman is revitalized by the divine energy with a sudden, airy foosh sounding.
The group celebrates the miracle while the woman in yellow takes the other's hand with a sudden, quick grab sounding. One of the children proudly explains that such a miracle is easy for a high-ranking deity like Jah. The woman in yellow bows deeply with a sudden, respectful bow sounding to express her eternal gratitude.
Jah acknowledges her thanks but immediately asks for a favor in return for his hope.
He flourishes his fan with a sudden rhythmic flap sounding and a sudden deep flume sounding.
From a high vantage point, the group is shown standing above an abyss filled with numerous red-eyed spirits.
A sudden, sharp crack sounding happens as the dark spiritual cage fractures.
Shards scatter everywhere with a sudden violent shatter sounding as Youngjin finishes the fight.
Youngjin leaves the crumbling arena, instructing the shaman to perform a memorial rite upon waking. Smoke disperses with a sudden, airy fwish sounding while Hisu watches the destruction. Youngjin commands Hisu to move out of his path while the dust settles.
The ruined shrine stands silent beneath the chapter title.
Hisu raises his hand in confusion at the sudden departure of the born. Startled by the silence, Hisu glances around the arena in total bewilderment. A sudden rapid swish sounding and a sudden massive crash sounding signal a heavy transition. Sitting amidst the rubble, Hisu stares at the massive blade lying nearby.
A memory of a crying woman flickers.
Hisu yelps in pain with a sudden sharp slap sounding as he is shaken awake. Hisu's mother cups his face in her hands while asking if he is unharmed.
He pulls away with a sudden quick yank sounding while his mother weeps with a sudden soft plop sounding.
She apologizes for everything while her tears fall with a sudden wet drip sounding.
A sudden loud whoosh sounding follows Youngjin as he walks away from the survivors.
The woman wonders if the young boy is Lord Jah, a lord of the heavens, leaving Hisu confused.
Youngjin suddenly coughs up blood with a sudden wet splurt sounding, shocking those nearby.
Youngjin snaps his ritual fan shut with a sudden sharp flap sounding.
A sudden airy foosh sounding occurs as Youngjin and the child spirits bid farewell and depart.
Magical energy swirls with a sudden sharp fwish sounding as the scene concludes. A woman enters a quiet somnogram. The woman smiles warmly as her child calls out for his mother. An old man carries a heavy pack while chanting a rhyme about tigers. He approaches the moon shrine, thinking about rice cakes for good children.
A stack of rice cakes rests prepared.
In the present, Hisu drops his shopping bags with a sudden, quick swish sounding. Hisu grumbles about thawed food while the white bulldog questions his delivery boy status.
The dog scolds Hisu with a sudden sharp clack sounding, leading Hisu to threaten his dinner.
Hisu's phone vibrates with a sudden rhythmic buzz sounding while the dog demands supper.
Checking his vibrating phone, Hisu sighs while thinking about how hungry he is.
They discuss the boy shaman's miraculous powers while looking over a spread of Korean food.
A dark memory reveals that Hisu actually died on a rainy night long ago.
The grandfather spirit explains that Hisu's healing abilities stem from a mysterious internal power.
The white bulldog stares intently while informing Hisu that he must provide assistance from now on.
Darkness falls over the quiet city apartments.
A robed figure overlooks the urban landscape.
The mysterious observer vanishes at the fwish.
Back at school, Hisu tells the dog spirit that he understands the concept of historical records.
Hisu walks tiredly toward his high school. The dog spirit watches Hisu skeptically, questioning his lingering doubt about their shared situation.
Two schoolgirls confront Jiwon for taking photos, accusing him of being a creeper.
Dogyung interrupts the argument to ask Jiwon if he is hunting for ghosts again. Dogyung charms the girls while explaining Jiwon's strange hobbies, making them losh. A black-haired girl joins the group as Dogyung laughs and promises to handle Jiwon.
Dogyung advises Jiwon to use his specialized gadgets instead of a phone for his investigations.
Jiwon snatches his phone back with a sudden quick grab sounding as the girls accept the apology.
The black-haired girl demands Dogyung speak more politely despite his friendly tone.
Dogyung questions why Jiwon is on their floor before even dropping off his backpack.
The black-haired girl scolds Dogyung for always encouraging Jiwon's eccentric paranormal pursuits.
Jiwon recalls a previous incident where a ghost's voice was captured on his recorder while Dogyung listens.
A graphic explains that ghosts are made of electromagnetic energy and interact with surrounding fields.
Jiwon explains that spiritual interference causes lights to flicker and navigation systems to malfunction. Leah dismisses the existence of ghosts and insults Jiwon's appearance.
Leah explodes in rage after Jiwon returns the insult, requiring Dogyung to restrain her.
Dogyung expresses genuine interest in the idea of a ghost being in their classroom.
Dogyung introduces Jiwon as a friend he has known since middle school. Leah and another girl approach Jiwon, curious about the strange electronic equipment he is carrying.
The scene shifts back to the classroom as a student calls out for Dogyung.
Dogyung is mobbed by a crowd of students by the classroom door while Hisu watches. Dogyung tries to guide the crowd away from the door while answering questions about his activities. Jiwon and Hisu stand back to back as Jiwon's device begins to display alarming messages about death and blood.
A sudden sharp crackle sounding and a sudden quick tick sounding occur as the boys react to the disturbing readings.
Hisu looks away with a hollow, exhausted expression on his face.
Leah excitedly approaches Hisu to offer him a handmade bracelet her mother prepared for them. Hisu takes the gift with a sudden quick grab sounding before refusing to wear it with a sudden rough shove sounding.
Hisu explains that wearing matching jewelry would give their classmates the wrong idea about their relationship.
Hisu mentions that his forefather promised that spirits would no longer pursue him.
Leah listens with a concerned and skeptical look as Hisu explains his new situation.
Hisu claims that everything in his life has finally returned to a normal state.
Leah reminds Hisu of how effectively he fought against a powerful enemy recently.
Hisu is completely baffled and asks when this alleged fight took place. A sudden airy whoosh sounding and a sudden metallic clack sounding happen as Hisu reacts instinctively. A sudden forceful grab sounding occurs as Hisu lunges forward and silences Leah with his hand.
Hisu looms over the terrified girl, appearing to be in a trance-like state. Hisu stares at his own hand in absolute horror and disbelief at his sudden loss of control.
Hisu frantically tries to apologize while insisting that he wasn't the one acting just now.
Jiwon enters the lab and catches the two students in a highly awkward and compromising position. Jiwon scratches his head with a sudden, soft scratch sounding while admitting he found their conversation too interesting to ignore.
Hisu and Leah both react with wide-eyed shock at being caught eavesdropped upon.
Jiwon formally introduces himself to Hisu while holding his various ghost hunting gadgets.
Leah is startled and asks how Jiwon could possibly know who she is.
Jiwon reveals that he is aware her mother is a practicing shaman.
Jiwon mentions that rumors have been spreading about her ever since she brought tarot cards to school.
Jiwon adjusts his glasses while recounting a local legend about a statue that runs through the night.
Leah whispers to Hisu about how they were nearly crushed by a car during that incident.
Jiwon provides his professional opinion that the entity responsible is a poltergeist.
He points to a flagpole that has been mysteriously uprooted several times as evidence of the hauntings.
Jiwon claims he personally witnessed an incredible event that confirmed all the urban legends for him. He notes that the spiritual status of the area has shifted significantly since that specific day. Jiwon decides to be direct and honest with the pair about his investigations.
He admits that most people usually ignore him or think he is crazy when he talks about ghosts.
Jiwon explains the science of how EMF devices detect the electromagnetic signatures of spirits.
A sudden, light tap sounding occurs as Jiwon brings his device near Hisu and gets a maximum reading.
Hisu pushes the equipment away with a sudden quick shove sounding while asking for the scientific proof. A sudden electric pzit sounding happens as all of Jiwon's devices simultaneously register the word death.
Hisu glares at Jiwon and asks what he expects them to do about his conclusions.
Jiwon asks a direct question while staring at the two of them suspiciously. Jiwon wonders aloud if the two of them are actually ghost hoarders.
He clarifies his theory that they are people who actively collect spirits.
Ji-won confronts Hee-soo and Leah about their persistent lies regarding the supernatural. Ji-won holds up his phone to reveal incriminating photographic evidence.
The screen displays a clear shot of the pair fleeing from a muscular poltergeist.
He zooms in on their terrified expressions to prove his point.
Hee-soo is left speechless as his secrets are exposed.
Leah argues that Ji-won's aggressive confrontation makes him seem like a villain. The two students stare at him with deep suspicion.
A boy with short black hair and a neck tattoo watches with a smirk.
A wooden box releases dark energy with a sudden, airy fwish sounding.
A massive shadow erupts behind the boy with a sudden loud whoosh sound.
Back in class, Hee-soo struggles to focus while writing in his notebook.
He yawns while his phone lets out several sudden rhythmic buzz sounding.
Hee-soo grows irritated by Ji-won's constant messages about needing a shaman.
The classroom door opens with a sudden heavy slide sounding and a sudden loud bang sounding.
The entire class falls silent as Do-kyung stands in the doorway.
Two students greet Do-kyung, surprised by his sudden return to school.
He points at one of them with a chillingly calm expression.
Do-kyung challenges his friends to a game of rock, paper, scissors. One boy loses and pays up with a sudden soft boing sounding of the cash. He smiles while asking his friends if they want to go another round.
He raises the stakes to 50,000 won with a predatory look in his eyes.
The loser is sent crashing into the desks with a sudden violent crash sound there.
The boy unleashes a long, maniacal laugh that echoes through the room.
Do-kyung mocks the boy's cowardice while his friend rushes to help. The student tries to wake his friend with a sudden frantic shake sounding.
Do-kyung dismissively explains to the class that they were just playing. Leah and her classmates watch the scene with expressions of pure horror.
Do-kyung leans in close to his next victim, asking who wants a turn.
He mocks the boy's fear while his heart lets out several sudden rhythmic badump sounding. The classroom is left in shambles as the boy walks away. The room is filled with several sudden quiet murmur sounding and a sudden sharp screech sounding.
Hee-soo listens as students speculate that Do-kyung has been possessed by a villain.
A girl in denial suggests he is merely preparing for an acting role.
Do-kyung blows smoke with a sudden airy flue sounding from a vape.
A student with freckles nervously asks him to stop before the teacher sees.
Do-kyung screams at the boy to speak up, terrifying everyone nearby. He puts a hand on the boy's head and offers him a bat.
He wagers a large sum on the exact moment the teacher will enter.
The teacher arrives at the door, panting from her frantic run.
She stares at Do-kyung with a look of intense shock and recognition.
Do-kyung dismissively beckons her to come closer as if she were a support net.
She demands to know why he would hit another student in her class.
Do-kyung grabs her face and pulls her close with a terrifying grin. She strikes him across the face with a sudden, violent slap sounding.